Oh, hi there. Ollie Anderson here. You're listening to Creative Status. This is a podcast about using your creativity to improve your life so you can grow real and align your thoughts, words, and actions with who you really are. Every episode, I like to interview somebody about the human condition, what it means to truly be a real human being who is aligning themselves with wholeness instead of fragmentation. Today's episode is an interview with Veronica Moreno. She is a life coach and energy healer who has loads of amazing, interesting, very energetic things to say about what it means to be a human being that's stepping into their power. We talk about what power even is in this context, what holds us back from being the powerful version of ourselves that we were all born to be, and looking at a 3-step process that can allow pretty much anybody to start getting results and improving their lives, feeling more flow by embracing all of the amazing things that Veronica has to say. So Veronica, thank you so much for this episode. I was really hyped up by the time we finished this conversation. Everybody else, hope that this interview gives you some value, helps you figure out a few things in relation to your own stuff. And if it does help you, please leave a review somewhere. And pretty much that's all I have to say. Here we go. Thanks a bunch. Boom. Oh, hi there, Veronica. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Creative Status. We're going to be talking about reclaiming our power, which I think is one of the most important topics in the world because so many people out there seem to be living what Theroux called lives of quiet desperation. I'm throwing that quote out there all the time these days. Before we get into it, do you feel like introducing yourself, telling people what you do, what you're all about, why you are interested in this particular topic as a kind of coaching niche that you've got for yourself, and also what you want to get out of this conversation?
Hi, Ollie. Welcome. Thank you for having me here. And hello, everyone who's listening. My name is Veronica Moreno. I am a mindset coach, energy healer, and counselor. And the work I do is all about helping people reclaim their power. So it's about helping people to break free from the conditioning of the past, for all that programming, all that conditioning that is keeping us stuck, and to really step into our power, our true self, so they can live their highest life, so they can live the life that feels right for them and that they truly want to live, not the life that others expect you to live or that we were programmed to live, but a life that feels authentic and aligned.
Amazing. And what do you want to get out of this conversation that we're about to have?
Well, I think I would love to share some insights. I think what we do, you and I have a big overlap, and we have lots of things in common in the work we do. So hopefully bringing our ideas together, our experiences, our journeys, our insights, hopefully will inspire other people so they feel more empowered and more free to start really creating the life they truly want to live.
That's an awesome way to look at it. So hopefully if we do this right, we're going to help people get in touch with their own power. So I'm going to dive right into it. One thing that you just said in the introduction to yourself that you just shared with us is that there's kind of a link between our power and our real self, or our authentic self. When I like to think about these topics, that's kind of how I see it. I think the main thing that takes power away from people is this disconnection from who they really are and from what life really is. So for people who know my work or have listened to this podcast before, it always comes down to this idea that real always works. And the reason that real always works is because it's ultimately putting us in touch with the power that we all have to be connected to life and to get results from life by embracing life. So let's kind of crack that open a little bit. Mm-hmm. How do you see that link between, power and the real self? And maybe as well, we need to define power as a word. Like when we're talking about power, what do we mean?
Yeah, so as we grow up, we are exposed to a lot of conditioning, right? It starts with our parents telling us what's right, what's wrong, that we are a good girl or a good boy for doing this or that. But if we behave in a certain way, then no, that's not good. And then we have collective programming, right? We have the society, we have the culture, religion, we have the school, our teachers, other role models. And as we grow up, because when we're young, we are like a sponge. Our brain brain is like a sponge. So we absorb everything we see, some things we copy, and we start making decisions about ourselves, about others, and about the world. And this is not ours. This is something that we copy, that we inherit, decisions that we made based on certain circumstances. So we start to put layers on ourselves, right? Of what we are expected to be, what we are expected to accomplish. And we start to put layers on top of our true self to fit in, to make sure that we are loved, that we are accepted, that we're not going to be rejected. And when we live our lives based on this conditioning, when this conditioning, which shows us subconscious beliefs, beliefs about ourselves, about others, about the world, when we live our life based on this conditioning, on this programming, then we are not in our power, because it's someone else's projection, someone else's beliefs, right? So we are not ourselves. It's when we release, when we let go of these layers of this programming, then we can start connecting with our true self, with what was always there from the beginning, our true essence, our gifts, our talents, what we came here with to the world, what we came here to share. And that's, for me, that's being in our power. For me, being in my power means that I am living my life consciously, that I am the creator of my life, that I am not creating my life on autopilot and creating things that are not joyful, that are not what I want to experience, right? That I'm not subject from that conditioning. And for me, that is power. And like you said, it goes hand in hand together with being our authentic self and that realness that you talk about.
Wow. You just used so many of my favorite words and phrases, like my brain is about to explode. It sounds like, in a way, what you're talking about is power ultimately is about making conscious choices. Like the little choices that we make on a day-to-day basis are ultimately what create the lives that we end up living. And if we don't know who we really are, because we've got all these layers of social conditioning and bullshit and limits and beliefs and all this kind of stuff that's not real, then the choices that we end up making are going to be a reflection of that. And we're going to end up choosing an unreal life rather than a real life. And that's exactly how I see it as well. Like, really, most of the work that I end up with doing people when I'm coaching them is about helping them to just get back in touch with the choices that they actually want to make from their essence, as you called it, from their realness, as I call it, so that they can live the lives that they want to live, that are an expression of something true, rather than all of this conditioning, which is ultimately just a bunch of illusions that we've picked up. So let's break that down a little bit more. When you talk about like all these extra layers that we add to our relationship with ourselves, what are some examples of these layers? Like, I totally agree with you, but like, just so we can make it a bit more practical, maybe, like, what are we specifically talking about?
Yeah, of course. So, for example, I'm going to give some very personal examples here to just make this easy. So, for example, if you develop the belief that you're not good enough or that you have to be perfect, for example, for me, I grew up always being really good at school, getting good marks. Why? Because my parents, especially my mom, will always compliment me, oh, you're such a smart girl. And love and appreciation will always, not always, but mainly come from me. Okay, the best marks, I need to be the best employee, I need to be the best, I need to be perfect. And then I put a layer on, it's kind of like a role, and that becomes a part of me. Oh, I have to be perfect. And then years down the line, I was following a path when I started working in the corporate world, in banking and consulting many, many, many years ago, before I started my coaching practice. And I was kind of on autopilot, right? I was just following this programming, And then I started working in the corporate world and things were going well and I was making a lot of money and more compliments and more love and more appreciation from my family, my friends. Oh, that feels so good, right? Our ego goes, oh, I love that, right? So these are layers that I have put on myself. The corporate girl, the one who makes a lot of money, the one who always gets the promotion, the successful one. That's not me. That was a job, that was not who I truly was. There was much more to me than just that corporate world. And then eventually I hit a not rock bottom, I think, feeling very bad, but very empty. And I thought, but why if I have all this I have this wonderful job, I'm making lots of money, I'm so successful, based on what society would consider a definition of someone successful. If I'm so successful and everyone, is like, wow, jealous of me, why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel so unfulfilled? This doesn't make any sense. Why? Because I was living my life based on my layers and those roles and that programming. Yeah. It wasn't my true self. My true self was there hiding somewhere, somewhere down there, really, really, really hiding and really dormant, because I hadn't given her any space. So because we are the creators of our life, whether we like it or not. The difference is who we are creating this life from. Are we creating our lives from our true self and from our power and from our vision and being aligned with our values? Or are we creating our life based on someone else's expectations or all those layers and all those roles? And that's exactly what I was doing. I was creating my life. I was the creator of my life back then as well. It's not that suddenly something changed. I was the creator of my life. It's just that I was creating something that wasn't aligned with my true self. Yeah. And that was the source of so much unfulfillment and emptiness.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because it's a really great example of just a very common story, like in the human experience. Like so many people, they end up giving into this programming and being prompted by it into making choices that are not their choices, like we said. And the end result is always the same. The end result of living like that is what you've just shared with us, which is the kind of existential void that people feel, where things look okay on the surface, like they've got success, so to speak, in the form of like a nice job and blah, 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 blah. But they feel completely empty inside, and they've just got this restless feeling, this itch that they don't know how to scratch, which is the void ultimately. And this void only comes around for one reason, and it's a disconnection from the truth. And eventually what I've seen with people, if they've been in this place of the void for too long, they kind of snap and they realize, right, I need to change something. I need to wake up. I need to start integrating who I really am ultimately, so that I can put myself on the path I was supposed to be on and step away from all these layers and all these roles and things that I've been playing, rather than actually being really connected to my being and who I am. And so in your case, what did you do to kind of step away from that void and to start filling it with your realness or your essence, or, however we want to say it? Like, how did you start to step away from the void into something more real?
Yeah, so for me, what triggered it was that I moved to London for work with a wonderful, and I'm going to say, based on the definition of successful that I had back then, which wasn't mine. So it was wonderful. I was making a lot of money, very comfortable. Everyone was very lovely. And I felt so unfulfilled and so empty. And I thought, what's wrong with me? So it all was triggered because I felt that I really needed a career change. Right. So I thought, okay, so this is clearly not for me. I need a career change. And by starting to explore a career change, I started to ask myself very simple questions like, but what do I want to do with my time? What am I really good at? What do I enjoy? And just asking myself those simple questions, I started to discover that I had been living my life not based on my realness or my essence, but on someone else's expectations. And the answers that came from these questions, from just a self-discovery process, really shocked me, because I was like, oh my God, I'm someone at work, but I am not this person. Like, the true me is not this person. And so eventually what happened is that I thought that something like coaching or some form of therapy, it would be a good career for me, because I thought, well, normally people come to me for advice, so maybe this is something I can explore. So back then, I studied a master's degree in counseling, and that kind of put me on a path of self-discovery and healing. And that's where the magic started to happen. When instead of looking outside and thinking, okay, how am I going to make my family happy? How am I going to impress my friends? How am I going to impress everyone? How am I going to fulfill this ego and this role, this mask that I have created about the successful corporate world, Veronica? How can I move from that to how can I be happy, right? When I started to look inside, I started to unravel so many layers, because when I started doing that, during my master's degree in counseling, I had to do a lot of therapy myself. And that opened a Pandora box. That literally opened a Pandora box. And then I realized how I had been living my life subject to so much conditioning and programming, and not based on what I really wanted to do and what made me happy, not others happy, but me happy. So from then I started to, of course, deep dive into a lot of personal healing, a lot of things that I needed to heal from my parents' divorce, from when I was a kid. I realized how much this conditioning and this programming had been holding me back. And although I'm grateful for everything I learned, and to be honest, it gave me, it gave me stability, it gave me independence. So I'm grateful for that. But I realized it's when I started to look within that I realized how much I had been holding myself back. Before I was blind, before I was completely blind. And that was like bringing light to a lot of shadow parts of me. And that took me on a journey of deeper and deeper layers of healing, and then going more into the energy healing work. And and thank God I decided to start that path, because I feel like I'm a completely different person now. If I compare myself now and 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I started this healing journey, I probably, you would meet me back then and now, and you would say, that's your twin sister, but that can't be you. It's a different person. Yeah. And that was all about living old stuff, like shedding all those layers, like a snake sheds the skin. It was about shedding all those layers and letting my true me come out to the surface. So that's two different people. That's two different Veronicas.
Yeah. Like most of the layers that hold us back are things that are ultimately attached to our identity. And so it makes total sense, because this journey that you've been on is what I would describe as been the journey from fragmentation to wholeness. So when we're living according to all this social programming and like the underlying shame and stuff like that causes us to keep believing in it, we're basically split from who we really are, as we keep saying. And the only way we can uphold that illusion is by constantly adding things to the call of the void, so to speak. So we add our career, we might add some unreal relationships, we add things like that we're chasing, like more money or addictions and distractions, whatever it is. All of these things just become layers that we identify with, so we can keep buying into all those illusions. And then one day something happens, if we're lucky, where we kind of wake up, we're like, hang on, there must be more to life than this. And then we go on this journey that you've been on, where we're returning to wholeness. But how did you find that journey itself? Because in the way you've described it, it's like, okay, 12 years ago, whatever you said, you kind of woke up and you put yourself on this healing journey, and it's been kind of organic and it's just unfolded very naturally, and it's led to this place where you now are, where you stepped into your power and the real version of who you are. But was it painful? Because one thing I found is when people start to strip away these layers of identity and their attachment to the void, even though they don't want to be feeling the void, they do two things. The first thing is that they unleash all kinds of pain that they've been avoiding in the short term. Because when we become split from ourselves in the way that we're talking about, there's a lot of underlying shame and guilt and trauma, like I was saying, that makes us believe in the social conditioning. And so when we start facing that stuff, then initially it can be quite painful, because we're going to have to face that. But also there's going to be all kinds of emotional stuff that we've been running away from. Like the reason we choose the void in the social programming is because we're not ready to face certain emotions. So like you said, there was some stuff about your parents' divorce and all this kind of thing. Like you've probably been running away from that your whole life, which is why you were running towards the success, as we called it. When you get rid of the the unicorn of success, all that pain starts to re-emerge so you can release it and actually move further into wholeness. But then there's another level as well where we have to let go of our beliefs. That can be painful because those beliefs are like an interpretation basically of life that we've created as a kind of substitute for the truth, again, so we can avoid releasing the pain, so to speak, but also integrating the shadow stuff. So I guess the question is, was it painful and difficult? I'm assuming it might have been at times, but how did you ride through that and get to where you are now, which is this kind of foundation of power on the other side of it?
It was challenging. That's the word I'm going to use to describe it. Painful, yeah, sometimes. It's not always pleasant, right? Let's say that healing, self-discovery, healing, it's not a journey. It's not a bed of roses, right? It's not a path of birds and unicorns. It's challenging. But the thing is that it can be painful when, for example, when I realized, that I have been sabotaging all my relationships based on or because of my decisions or my interpretation of what I experienced through my parents' divorce. Yeah, it was a bit painful. It was like, oh my God, I have been doing this to myself. I am responsible. So you need to take responsibility, right? That's a bit that can be scary. It can be scary. It can be painful to realize, oh my God, so it was me all this time. It was not the other person. It was me sabotaging myself. Okay, that's not pleasant. But at the same time, it came with a big relief. And I know that a lot of people are not willing to do this work because they think it's going to be really painful, because they think that that they're not going to be able to contain it, or that maybe once they get in touch with their emotions, they're not going to be able to control them, or it's going to be too overwhelming. But the reality is that if you do this, especially if you do it with the guidance of someone who can help you move through this, it doesn't need to be that painful. Yeah, there's going to be moments of, oh my God, I have been doing this to myself. Or yeah, when you allow the anger, the sadness, the fear that you have been repressing, like you said, because you look the other side, right? Because we run away from this because it's painful, right? But once you let it process it, that's the thing, that it's not painful anymore. Yeah. You go through that transition, and then it comes with such a big sense of relief, or for me at least, that's how I experienced it. So the painful was minimal compared to the sense of relief and liberation that I have experienced, and that I keep experiencing every time I go through a deeper layer of healing. Yeah. Right. So I would really like to encourage, anyone who's listening to this podcast and is a bit reluctant to start that inner work because they're scared about how that might unfold. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And yeah, sometimes sitting with that anger or sitting with that sadness or with that fear, it's not going to be fun, let's say. It's not going to be fun, but it's going to be so liberating. So liberating. So I think it's really, really worth it. And the way I navigated it is allowing myself time to explore. And I have worked with many therapists or healers, and even today, sometimes when I feel stuck, I will always go and work with someone who can help me move through that process. Doing it on your own, that is painful. That is painful because you don't know how to move through it. You don't know what to do with your emotions when they come up. You don't know what to do next. You might feel that, okay, right, so now I've let all this behind, but now who am I without these layers and without this programming? That can be very scary, right? So doing it on your own can be a bit tricky. So for me, I'm very grateful that I always found, I guess, the support I needed at the time, and that's what actually made me become a coach and a healer myself, because I thought, oh wow, like this is such a gift that you can give to others, what these people have helped me do and where I am now. That's what I want to help others do. That's what I want to that's what I want to do for a living. So it's a journey that for me still continues, because I don't claim to be completely free from all programming, all limiting beliefs, all conditioning, no way. Still continues. But I think once you start, you can't, you just can't go back. It's like once you've taken the blue pill, right? it's over. Like you can't go back to the old ways of living. You can't go back to the hiding. You can't go back to the layers. No, it's all forward, right? Once you start, it's all forward. So very grateful for that journey. It has been challenging at times, of course, but I would encourage everyone to really take the leap and do the inner work, because it's so rewarding, and it's the only way. My opinion is the only way. Like really being aligned with your true self, with your purpose, with your essence, and living your life from that place of freedom and authenticity. It's the only way to happiness. It's the only way to fulfillment. The rest is a patch.
Wow. You just raised so many amazing and interesting points. I'm trying to rein myself in, otherwise I'm going to be ranting at you for the next 6 hours or so. There's two things, I guess, that are really important and helpful based on what you just said. One thing is this idea of it being challenging or even painful in the worst cases sometimes. The way that I look at it now is, if you face this stuff, i.e. you face the truth after spending some time away from it because you become disconnected from yourself because of all things God's about. If you face the truth, it is going to be uncomfortable and challenging in the short term, whilst you get to the other side of some of these mental blocks and things like that. But if you don't face it, you continue to stay on the path of resistance to the truth and distortion of the truth, so you can, keep fueling the void, the existential void of living in this disconnected way. That's going to be even more challenging in the long term. And so there's something there around how there's going to be discomfort either way, but it's basically about weighing it up and knowing that, okay, if you at least face the truth, you will get to this point where you're in touch with your power. And that is something that's never going to happen if you keep avoiding it. So that's really important. But then there's another thing you said about how eventually you reach this kind of point of no return. So you start facing things and you're removing these layers, and it's almost like you get to the point where you can't go back because you've done some of the work and you see how all this stuff works. And when you get to that point, you just kind of have to trust the process that is unfolding and that is calling you back to this deeper relationship with yourself and life. One thing that I've really found, in my own life and with my clients now, is that when you get to that point, it's actually almost as though there's no longer a battle, because we all have this natural drive towards wholeness. I think wholeness and realness are ultimately the same thing, and we're constantly being called back to wholeness, because wholeness is just the natural state of things. And all of these layers that we keep talking about and all this social conditioning are just fragments that are pulling us in the opposite direction. Eventually, though, when we get to this point that you're talking about, we can kind of let go of all those layers, and it's almost like the battle is going to fight itself, because we have this natural drive towards wholeness. The unconscious is trying to become conscious. And if we just let go and go with it, because we're no longer afraid, that's when we can actually just trust the process, and a lot of things kind of fall into place by themselves, because this process is always happening anyway. It's just our resistance to it that causes it to not happen in the way that it's supposed to. So I guess my question for you is, is that how you've experienced it? So once we get over the fear, we can just trust that it does happen very organically. And also, how does the process that you walk people through in your own coaching practice of raising clarity, helping people heal, and then finding their treasure, how does that feed into this process that we've now tapped into, which is, it is kind of organic if you just trust and let go?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. That when you remain in the path of the conditioning, the programming, the ignoring your true self, that is real pain. That is real pain. The healing is discomfort, it's a challenge, it can be painful, but when you push through, there's light at the other side of the tunnel, right? But the other path is all pain. Like it only goes downwards, right? It only gets more and more and more painful. The more you repress it, the more painful it becomes. And yeah, it's like you describe it. It's an inner conflict, right? And I'm sure your listeners might be familiar with the idea of inner child work or shadow work or different parts of ourselves. In psychology, they talk about dissociation. Shamans call it soul retrieval. So it's the idea of having different parts of ourselves that are in conflict. And when we are in a path of not being our authentic selves, we carry different parts of ourselves. So we can carry a part that has been wounded, the part that needs to be perfect, the part that believes that you're not good enough, the part that is terrified of relationships, the part that is not confident enough to start a business. We have all these different parts of ourselves. And there is a battle because consciously we have desires, and you might want to have a loving, healthy, fulfilling relationship. You might want to start your own business. You might want to quit your job for a year and travel the world. We have all these aspirations and desires. But then there are all those parts of ourselves that haven't been healed, that we haven't integrated, that are fighting in the opposite direction. And that's so exhausting. That's really, really exhausting. That is painful, right? When we have this inner conflict within us. And that's what happens when we don't look inside and when we don't do the inner work. And then we continue in the path of, I would love to start my own business, but I suppose it's better to stay here in this office job that I really hate. Yeah, I would love to get married and have kids, but I guess it's better to just keep sleeping with random people every night because I don't want to face my fear of commitment. It's that conflict. And conflict is painful, is tiring. So that would be kind of another way to describe it. And in terms of the process I use with the people I work with, so I work in kind of 3 stages. So the main or the first step would be to get clarity, because it's like driving a car if you don't know the direction, if you don't know where you're going. You can't be driving in circles if you're not clear around your values, your true desire. So it's about listening to the heart. I work with my clients on really helping them create the vision of the life they truly want to live, not the ones that others expect them to live, not the one that they were told, the things they were told to do, the life they truly want to live. And then once we have that vision, it's like, right, okay, so I'm sitting in the car. Now I know where I want to get to. This is my holiday destination. This is my vision. This is where I want to get to. But the accelerator is not working. I don't have enough petrol. I only have 3 wheels instead of 4. So what's stopping me, right? What's stopping me? What's holding me back from getting there? And that would be... I use a lot of different healing techniques, but the idea is always about, right, okay, what is the belief that is holding you back? What part of yourself doesn't support, what beliefs or what parts of yourself don't support that vision, are not fully on board with that vision? And if anyone is listening to this, and if you just, close your eyes for a second and you visualize the life you truly want to live, your vision, your true desires, your goal, your ideal life. And sometimes you start to feel in the body, you can visualize it, but sometimes you start to feel in the body, there was a a part of my body tensed up. There's a resistance right there. Or a voice kicks in, you have to be kidding. That ain't never happened for you. You're not good enough for that. That doesn't happen for people like you, So we start, I always take them to the root or to identify the resistance, And I always take them to the root of when they made that decision. Right, okay, so this voice that is coming up for you, that you're not good enough, that type of life doesn't happen for people like you, that fear in the solar plexus or in the stomach. Right, okay, so let's track it. Let's trace it back to where it started. When did you make the decision that type of life doesn't happen for you? When did you make the decision that you're not good enough to start your business? When did you make the decision that you don't deserve a healthy, loving relationship? And then when we get to the root of it, then we can heal it. And then I help the person talk to those parts of themselves so they can rewrite the story. And I say rewrite the story and not the past or the events, because it's not about what happened. It's not about our previous experiences. It's the story that lives within us that counts. That's what's creating our reality, not the events, not what happened. The story that lives within us, the narrative we tell ourselves, that's what's creating our reality. So what I help them do, and for me, healing is about that. It's about identifying the resistance, the blocks, the old beliefs, the programming, going to the root of it and rewriting that story and integrating those parts of ourselves, right? Yeah. And then when we start integrating those wounded parts of us or disempowered parts of ourselves that didn't believe in themselves, that were keeping us small, then we make space for what I call the inner treasures. And same as we give space to those parts of ourselves that carry the wounds, the unpleasant emotions, the old stories, the limiting beliefs, we also have to give space to the parts of ourselves that carry all the inner wisdom that we have, all our inner, the talents, the gifts we came here to share with the world, the skills, the positive traits, the inner power, the inner wisdom, the confidence, the caring, loving nature we have. And we are all different, and we all have different things to share, different skills. So it's also about helping people become in touch with that, because sometimes we can get to or focus too much on the healing, letting go, which is totally necessary. Mm-hmm. But it's like when you have a garden that is full of weeds, you first have to clear the weeds, because otherwise nothing's going to grow. But also you have to plant some seeds and water them if you want to grow fruits or veggies or a tree or a flower. Otherwise, you're going to have a very beautiful patch of green grass, but nothing's going to grow. So it's also about nurturing that, those inner treasures and those positive traits and those part of ourselves that have everything we need to create that vision, to help us make that vision our reality.
Yeah. That's an amazing process. So clarity, healing, and then finding and I guess utilizing the treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when it comes to the healing stage and stepping into kind of using our treasures or sharing our treasures with the world, it can be quite disruptive? Because one thing I've found, and you've kind of talked about it yourself actually, like at the start of this journey of going through the process of, figuring out what's going on inside of us and then bringing the real stuff to the surface, we're a different version of ourselves to who we are when we end up the process and we see the treasure that we've been hiding from ourselves. So in your case, for example, you said 12 years ago you were kind of a totally different person.
Mm.
When you uncover the real version of yourself, and I think we can say healing is ultimately just weeding out all the unreal stuff so we can see what is real.
Mm.
It can be a disruptive thing at first, can it? Because we realize the life we built for ourselves on the surface of the void is not real. And so we kind of have to dismantle it and kind of just start replacing it with something else that's more real. How do you help people deal with that disruption, I guess?
Yeah, well, it is a process. And I always tell people, and that's why, for example, in my work, I always work with programs and not with one-off sessions, because I believe this is a process. And sometimes people expect, just magic to happen in one session, and especially, now when they say, I just need to go to this healer, shaman, I just need to go to this person and do some kind of magic, and suddenly my life is going to change overnight. And I'm like, well, maybe those expectations are too high, and that's not exactly how it works. Yeah, you can have a healing session that might bring a lot of realizations, a big clearing, and you feel very different, but ultimately it is a process. And if you have been telling yourself all your life that you're not good enough, that you can't do this, that you don't deserve love, that you don't deserve success, and you start leaving that behind, and all the other parts of yourself that you have been keeping dormant all this time, or that you have been buried all this time, will need a bit of time and will need a bit of love to come to the surface. So this doesn't happen overnight. And at the beginning, there is a bit of a conflict. There is the autopilot, you have been identifying and clearing, and it's shedding, it's going, but there's still kind of like an autopilot, that still kicks in that, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, no, but I am good enough, and then it becomes like this, I don't want to say battle, but it's kind of like a battle. It's like, imagine you have a part of yourself has been very loud for many, many years, and they've had the microphone, and then you're like, no, thank you, but you're not going to have this microphone anymore because, this is not me, this is not who I am, so you don't have the microphone anymore. And then you pass it along to the other part of yourself, who you truly are, right? To those inner treasures, to that grace, to that essence, to that realness, right? But the other part might still want the microphone a bit now and then, and there's a bit of a battle in there until finally it becomes your state of being. And for example, I do a lot of work around. So the way I do this inner work in my sessions, I use a lot of visualization and a lot of healing in that way, and on integrating these parts of ourselves. And I always tell my clients, when we do this, and sometimes I even do a recording for them, it's you really need to imprint it, and this is a process, and this might take time. And I tell them to do it every day and to really connect with those parts of themselves every day on a daily basis, until then it can become a natural. It becomes just who you are, who you always were. But there needs to be a bit of time and a bit of adjusting, until that becomes your new normal and just who you are. It is a process. So people need to be aware that it can take a bit of time until that becomes just your natural new state of being, because you've been doing on autopilot for 20, 30, 80 years of your life. It can't change in 2 hours after whatever, you know what I mean? So,
I love how real you're being about it, because there's so much bullshit out there, really, like on the internet, where people think you can just click your heels together and return home from Oz and like all your problems are going to be solved. But like the way that life works is, it is about the process, moving from one state to another. And that autopilot that people are struggling with, that ego, it's a habit. This is what people don't understand. Like, our ways of thinking and identifying are habitual, and like any other habit, like giving up smoking or whatever else it is, it's going to take time to train yourself into the new way of being. And so you do need some consistency ultimately until you can let go of all the old patterns and step into just being real, and the power and the flow and all the amazing things that come with it. So, Veronica, this conversation has gone so quick.
I know.
I can't believe we've been talking for 40 minutes. I can tell that you practice what you preach, because there's so much power in the energy that you've brought to this conversation. And I really mean that. Like, your energy has lifted me up. I feel like I've had about 6,000 cups of coffee.
Oh, thank you.
If you could sum up everything we've talked about, if that is even possible, how would you do it? Like, what are your final words of wisdom? And can you let people know where they can find you online as well, or offline? Just basically, where can people get in touch with you to learn more about you and your work?
Of course, yeah. So I guess if I could summarize it, is that we are the creators of our life, whether we like it or not. Now, what we need to decide is from where or from whom we are creating this life. From our past, from our conditioning, from other people's expectations, or are we creating our life from our true self and from the vision we want to ourselves and from our empowered selves? And it doesn't matter where you are right now, because I know that sometimes people think, oh, but I've been through so much trauma, and, you have everything you need within you to to reclaim your power and start creating your life. All you need is within you. It's all about leaving, the conditioning, the programming, the old stuff behind, and letting and awakening your inner wisdom, your inner power, your confidence. That's all within you. You have the power to create your life. It lies within you. So I guess if I could share one final message, is of empowerment to let people know that everyone here listening has the power to create their lives. Now, with great power comes great responsibility. That's also true. And then you have to do the inner work. But I find it so empowering because so then I don't depend anymore on changing my husband, on changing my mother, on changing the world. No, I can change myself and I can create my reality. So don't let anyone tell you that you're just a victim or subject to whatever life throws at you, because that's not true. We are powerful beings. We are really, really, really powerful beings. So those will be my final words. And for anyone who wants to know more about my work and about what I do, my website is veronica-moreno.com, and I have a free 7-day course. It's called Step Into Your Power with Confidence and Joy, and you can sign up for that in my website. I will share a link with you all if you want to share it in the show notes. And that's a 7-day course, one lesson every day, and it will help you create your vision, get clarity on your vision, identify the resistance, so the process I had described, and then unlocking your inner treasure so you can confidently create the life you truly want to live. And I also run a free online community called Reclaim. And this one I co-host with my husband, who's a nutritional therapist. So together, we kind of cover all the areas of helping people to reclaim their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And that's also free to join. We run webinars every month. So I would definitely share a link of that. And you will find my contact details in my website. So if you have any questions about what we've discussed in this podcast, I always welcome your questions or your insights. So feel free to reach out if anyone wants, or just to say hi. I'm always happy to hear from you guys.
Boom. Well, I will absolutely share all those links in the show notes. Veronica, thank you so much for this. I appreciate everything that you've shared and your energy. It's been a good one. So thank you again. And boom, let's keep the power and the responsibility.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you so much, Ollie, for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.